Hey, it's Alan. Yeah, thanks for joining me on this episode of Pipeline to Profitability, the podcast for home service professionals. This podcast is proudly sponsored by Service Success Academy. So today we have Landon Brewer, a longtime home service operator and architect behind several leading industry platforms, being the founder and CEO of Platform Partners and Einstein Prime, whose main focus is optimizing enterprise values of leading home service organizations. I'm absolutely honored to welcome you to Landon, and I know you're going to take a lot of value today, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Let's get into it, shall we? So, welcome to the podcast, Landon. This has been something that I've really been looking forward to for a long time, and as you know, I'm not into the long intros, but I might just let you tell our listeners what's going on in your life and I want to have fun with this podcast today. So let's wind it up and welcome to the podcast, Landon.
Thank you for having me, Alan. Man, how long do we go back? I was trying to think when we first met. It was definitely pre-COVID. So it's gotta be what, 6-7 years ago? When we first met.
I recall probably 2017, maybe sooner. I met Joe Cunningham and Ken Goodrich around 2013, and I'm not too sure. It was a couple of years after that. It could have even been sooner, but yeah, we used to bump into each other mainly at the bar, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to say at the conferences, but based on the people that probably listen to you, they know it's the bar.
Well, most of the conferences I go to, and this is something that I've noticed with the number that I've been to over the years, is most of the business happens at the bar. But we might get to that later. But welcome to the podcast. So tell us what's happening.
Man, everything is happening. The world that we live in is changing rapidly, as you know. Our industry is moving at the speed of light. You had this convergence, all the COVID stuff that really kind of boosted everybody's business, and then the private equity money coming in, and then you have the aftermath of that, and now you got a whole lot of trepidation and people gobbling each other up, and it's now you're in a spot in the industry where you got to be an actual real operator that knows how to pull the pulleys and the levers of the business to actually be just killing it right now, because a lot of these private equity groups that came into it got into a little bit of a rude awakening in the last year or so. So it's a fun time to be in the space.
Yeah, look, I don't have the experience that you have with with the private equity space, because as you know, hasn't really hit Australia yet, but it's going to, and even if we have to force it to happen. But what my observation is, way too many companies were acquired that weren't probably ready to be acquired. They probably they didn't get the money that they deserved, and they just weren't ready. But knowing you for as long as I have, and I mean, we started doing a little bit of stuff together a couple of years ago. But what I see that's different in the industry that your group is doing, and I'd love for you to tell everyone a little bit more about that, is that you actually help the contractor to get their business in the best shape it can be before they sell. Have I summarized that correctly, my man?
Yeah. So, I think you're right. I hadn't thought about the way that you just said it, but I think there were a lot of people, and like there was this frenzy that happened a few years back as the U.S. started. Somebody wrote a paper to an investment banking somewhere that somebody else got a hold of, and then people started buying businesses and building platforms, and then it just kind of became a law of supply and demand. There's not a lot of amazingly good companies that are operating out there, but a lot of interest now in the space. So it drove multiples up, drove valuations up, and just it was this weird frenzy that happened. And so if you were in the right place at the right time, and you had put your business in order, and you had achieved some scale and some significant profitability, then you had a great opportunity to make some money, both short and long-term money. But a lot of people really hadn't been exposed to the buying and selling of businesses or private equity. And then they just started hearing their buddy did it, and this guy did it, and this guy I know did it, and everybody at the conferences was doing it. And so then it became this thing to do. And a lot of people just oddly did it as part of the thing to do. And a lot of private equity groups that thought there was little diligence required got into it and realized, wow, this is not what we expected. So yeah, it was kind of a unique thing. But what I learned in that, because I've had now 4 exits to private equity, what I've learned is that, and every time they're slightly different, but, and I probably shouldn't say this because I've been a part of it now, but really like peeling back the hood and like learning the private equity side. Private equity is like, I tell people it's kind of like a giant pyramid scheme, right? It's like the most sophisticated, legitimate pyramid scheme, where the people that are on the top of the pyramid, either the ones that are putting in the money or leveraging your assets to get a loan to buy your business, like those people that buy solid platform and will pay a premium for a solid platform, know that they can buy these other less successful, less scaled businesses at significantly lower values, and then they can plug them into the platform that they buy. They'll fix them up, make them shiny and new, and then get enough of those, and they'll go to the next buyer and they'll make a premium, right? So the ones that are on top that get bought or come in at the highest value, nobody will tell you that, but that's how you really continue to take multiple bites of the apple and leverage the arbitrage of underperforming businesses. And when you understand it, then you can kind of reverse engineer it, and then you can apply it from an operator perspective, right? And my goal today is like, having learned all this, how do we provide the same level of knowledge, resources, sophistication to the everyday operator that the private equity firm might be providing, right? How do we get companies to that level of scale and profitability to make them ever more valuable, so that should they decide to monetize, they're at the top of the pyramid, right? They're not at the bottom of the pyramid selling to a strategic or making a decision that may not be in their financial best interest. And we're trying to take the complicated world of high finance private equity and make it kind of a more streamlined, easily, better understood thing, at the same time elevating the mom and pops up to a little bit higher level of sophistication. So that's a lot that I just said there, but we're bringing private equity, we're flipping it upside down, and we're taking the mom and pop operators and elevating them with those resources.
Fantastic. Something else, Landon, that I want to throw into the equation is you and me met through best practice groups, and I'm probably one of the biggest advocates of best practice groups and coaches, because most contractors didn't get into the industry to build their business to sell, which I believe, because I think a little bit differently to your average contractor, that every business should be built to sell. And that's I've got another guest coming on soon, Michael E. Gerber. You've probably heard of him, but he talks about the system being ever so important, and we'll come to that.
You didn't plan this? You didn't plan this? And I got his book sitting right here.
So I've been communicating with Michael via email about getting him on a podcast, because he's here in Houston. So, I mean, we'll come to that because the system is important, and but it's a matter of the steps that someone needs to take to actually get their business for sale, which I'm hoping we can touch on. But best practice groups have been great for the industry, but I see a big change coming, and I've been watching what you guys are doing from the conventional best practice groups, and we know all most of them are in the US. There's very little going on in Australia. That's why I brought Service Nation to Australia, but there's more to it than that. I mean, we know all the contractors out there that have been playing in best practice and have not really got their business where it needs to be. But this was and this will lead to the next question about what's more important, a system or the right people. Is I had this conversation the other day with Jim Clark, who looks after this podcast, and we discussed what is more important, the right people or the system. And I'd love your view on that. And I'd like to talk about, I know we'll expand into a few different conversations, but where is the best practice? Where is best practice heading? But we'll go back to the system since you waved Michael Gerber's book at me.
So I will say it's probably a little bit different than you might expect. I will say it's first the people and then the system, because you got to find the right people to implement the system, right? So in level of importance, maybe it's pretty even playing field. But if you don't have the right implementer, integration person putting the system in place, it doesn't matter what system you have. It's just not gonna be effective, right? So I think you need, and this goes into your question about best practice. That's the area I fundamentally have always, because that's where I came from. That's where I started. I fundamentally have always believed that the area of weakness of all of the best practices groups, at least in our space, are that, most of them are a smorgasbord of information. Here's some systems. Here's this. Go back. We're going to present it to you on stage. Go back and do it. And, we'll have a couple of people on standby to answer some questions if you have questions, right? And which is great. Knowledge, information, all of that is absolutely tremendously valuable. I'm not trying to downplay it, but you know how difficult it is. You're an operator, right? You've been an operator. You know how difficult it is to come back and say, okay, my business looks like this. This is how it should look. Here's my step-by-step plan. This is what I have to do first. What happens when I run into this problem and I'm trying to implement this? What happens when I'm doing it's a very difficult thing, and you need to be handheld by somebody that's actually gone through it. Change management is the most important part of whether that system's going to become successful or not. That's why I say you got to have the person, and then you got to have the right system.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's always been, business has always been about the people. And it was a lesson I learned many years ago when I always had good systems in my business. Were they the right systems? And nothing compared to what I'm seeing you guys doing now. But it wasn't until, and this was me going through the whole EOS model, getting the visionary, the integrator position right. And I managed to get my business to about the 15 mil a year revenue without an integrator. It was just sheer fucking determination. It was like grit, but that's only going to get you so far. So it's when I got the integrator, the right integrator in place, that it just, like, the business took off. We doubled pretty quickly from that. Yeah, no, you're right in that. But it's all about the system and getting the right people on the bus. So I'd like to hear from your perspective you might want to talk about what you guys are doing, because I would love for all the contractors down under to understand what is the change that's coming to the industry. And I see, and Billy Stevens, a mutual friend, I responded to one of his posts in my group the other day, and he's talking about the biggest change to the industry in the last 100 years is going to come in the next 5 years. I replied, I believe it'll happen in the next 3 years, especially what I'm seeing in the best practice space. I'd love to dig into that a little bit deeper, my man.
Yeah. The change of technology that's enabled our business to grow, and it's just been mind blowing the last 10 years. I know that it seems to be coming slower towards Australia, which I kind of love Australia right now, because, as I talk to you and some of my friends over in Australia, I'm just realizing that, a lot of the tools and system stuff that we had in the, mid 2000, 2010 is just now kind of surfacing over here. And people are now still talking about going to flat rates. And I'm like, man, I hadn't had to have that. I used to argue seriously with people and create spreadsheets showing them why you could there's no risk of going to flat rate. And I was like, I had that argument for years, but I don't think I've had that discussion with anybody in the US for 10 years, and so to hear that that's still kind of like where it is, that means that we're still at we're in the first inning of opportunity on Australia, where we might be at, the seventh inning in the States. So to me, that's massively exciting. If we could put, some sophistication, some of the resources and stuff over in Australia that we've got here today, I think we're going to see a trajectory that's like hockey stick. But going to your original question, yeah, it's the pace of the technology change, the tools we have available has been staggering. Everything to me in these businesses is systems with data, right? So it may sound weird, and it's probably because I don't come from the trade. So I don't come from, I wasn't an air conditioning mechanic, plumber, etc. I came from like a finance and accounting background. So I just, examine everything through numbers. And I have the benefit of thinking kind of the way that these private equity groups think about business. And so when I came, I'm like, all right, the important piece of the data. So I got to figure out how the KPIs work to create operational efficiencies, to create more sales, and like, how do you take all of that and to compute profit, right? So when you start like really studying the business, which I've done every day for 20 some odd years, it's just, I am an absolute student of people like you, of all of these people you have in the show. And we just keep narrowing down the focus on different KPIs and different data points, but we've just never had good data, right? So all the best practices just have just random data they'll put out. Here's the revenue per truck, revenue for field employee, revenue for, like, they're just like little bits and pieces of a much larger thing that you have to understand. They're helpful, but you have to understand what's behind them. So, we've been able to use the technology now to take the data that we need to deliver it in a way that's meaningful to me, where I'm sitting on my couch right here and I have access to what's happening on every call that we have in North America and soon in here in Australia. Every call that's going on right now, I have visibility. I can look in and see what phase of their service call protocol they're in. And I can look at the data and the metrics and say, okay, this business in Wisconsin or Indiana over here has these issues, and here are the metrics. And so I could just look at that, pick up the phone and say, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I think the strategy we have to fix to do this next. And when you start to understand that, all of these businesses are data. And when you understand how to take the data and put a series of actions together to make it better data, like, you can just rapidly accelerate these businesses. But most people are too like lost in the field to get to really stop and take time to think about it. I've just had the luxury of like looking at it from that perspective.
Fantastic. I want to. I know we're probably going to keep going for a little bit because I love the conversation, but I'm looking at companies, and I actually work with a few companies that have come across onto your platform, and I recommend everyone to look into platformmybusiness.com. Is that right? That's the yep.
Yeah, I think about the website. We got a cheap. I mean, we have. It's hard for when people to ask me like, well, what do you do? I'm like, well, jump on a call and we'll throw out a Zoom call, and then we'll attach the API in your business, and then within 24 hours, I will know more about your business than you do.
Wow.
And I will tell you what's wrong with it. And then I'll give you the tools that you need to fix it, right? But that's because it's like you got people like me that have studied the business for 20 years and worked in them every day for many, many years, right? So it's a unique thing that when you get the technology that can take the information that's inside the brains of people that have studied and performed at very high levels, and then just apply it in any business. I mean, it's like instantaneous. What the fix is. So it's pretty remarkable.
It is, and yeah, as I said, Landon, the businesses that I've seen, instant improvement, and it's probably this is the bit I'd like to dig into. Is this buzzword is call by call management, but you guys are doing virtual ride-alongs, and I'd like to, maybe anyone that's listening, is what is it about the virtual ride-along that actually makes so much of a difference? I mean, I've got my view, but I'd love yours, my friend.
Yeah, so all of our businesses, everything that we've ever developed, all the tools, systems, all the things that we've done in the business has just been kind of an evolution of okay, we get to a sticking point here. We're at 5 million. We got to go to 7 million. We got at the sticking point. So we got to come up with a solution to get to 7 million. Then we get 7, we're going to go to 10. We got a sticking point, right? And that sticking point might be personnel, it might be technology, it might be any of these things. And so, I've had the luxury of building and being part of teams that have built businesses up to in the hundreds of millions of dollars now.
Mm.
And as you go along that path, it's like, okay, you have different iterations of things, but you'll run into a problem and you'll create a solution for that problem. And call by call is just that, right? Years ago when call by call came out, it wasn't even call by call when we first started describing it. It was, hey, we got a hold of this business that has 20 some odd technicians that doesn't have a service manager, and we can't find a service manager, and we need, one person can only effectively manage 8 to 10 people maybe. So we need to go out and find 4 service managers. Where are we going to find those service managers? And so what we did is like, all right, well, we're going to create a service call protocol. We're going to document it. We're going to, put everything in a system like you're talking about. And then we're going to go out and find smart people that have basic management skills that can rally up the technicians and be responsible for revenue. So we first called them revenue managers, right? And so here's your 10 techs, here's your 8 techs. You're like, this is your revenue responsibility. You have to follow this system, coach them on this protocol, make sure they're doing this, watch what they're doing at every call, be on the phone with them, help them. That was the first iteration of it. And then, we didn't like the name revenue manager in case, get on the phone with my revenue manager. That's probably not a good look, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to go with call by call. And then as call by call evolved and we saw successes with that, we started tweaking it, adding technology tools to it, and putting requirements in. Now today, with these CRMs, and these communications apps, we have the ability for people to do what I was telling you. I could see what's happening anywhere in the country, any call that's happening right now, real time through a communications app. And we tap into your CRM API, and our call by call manager is sitting there and making sure that you're following all of the steps on every call. Within 15 minutes, you should be doing this. We should see this photo uploaded, etc. It computes back to the CRM, and we're real time in there. So it's like a forward looking thing. It's like real time. It's not like, okay, we're going to review what happened after the call, and we got some person that's had 5 0 tickets in a row, and we're going to bring him in. It's like, no, this is what's happening. You're not following protocol. Go back into the home, put Mrs. Jones on the phone, and I'm going to talk to Mrs. Jones. I'm going to complete the steps for you. We're not going to waste a single call, right? And it just allows you a level of visibility that we've never had before, because we were really good. But in my last operational role, I'd be on our weekly GM conference calls, and I would say, hey, Mr. Vegas GM, you got a weakness here and your KPI is too low. Let's dive into what technicians are bringing that number down. And he would say, well, it's these guys. I say, okay, great. Well, what are you doing about it? And they would always say the same thing. We're going to train. We're going to ride along. He's going to train. I'm like, well, obviously they're trained. I assume you wouldn't put an untrained person in our customer's home. They should be trained in our protocol. What specific part of the process are they not good at? What are they omitting? And nobody could ever tell me. So now we have this level of visibility, seeing in real time into what's happening. And we could say, hey, if we've got somebody underperforming or somebody's having a bad day, we can identify it right now. We can come back to the office. We can recertify them on whatever part they're missing and send them back out to the customer. I mean, it's just evolutionized what we're doing with call by call.
It's very impressive what you guys are doing. Like I've been in the industry for a while, and you talked about bringing flat rate pricing I brought flat rate pricing to Australia around 2005. No one was doing it, and I'm thinking this is really strange. And the reason, and not too many people know this, but there was a company, it's not a big company, just a small company called Roto-Rooter came to Australia around 2000. And I think it was a franchise model, but anyway, Roto-Rooter was up and running in Australia, and they didn't adapt to us. They did not adapt their model. Like the word router has a different meaning in Australia,
I think
and
you have the universal meeting, but whatever.
and yeah, the flat rate pricing. They came in with the flat rate pricing model, which I know it works. I've been following a lot of companies in the US for many years, but so then the Master Plumbers Association at the time took the view, oh, flat rate pricing won't work in Australia because this company called Roto-Rooter couldn't make it work. But me, being the stubborn bloody person that I am, I said, no, we're gonna make it happen, and brought flat rate pricing to Australia as well as best practice. There was nothing. There is a little bit going on, but it's not like the US. And I would love the opportunity to awaken the contractors in Australia with what you guys are doing, and we'll come to that. But so if I was to say, Landon, I believe every business should be built to sell, whether you're selling it or not. Every business should be built on systems, and those systems should be used to attract the best people in the industry. Sometimes the best people are not the people that you think they are. Sometimes the best people are the ones that you might already have in your business. You've just got them in the wrong position. But so as far as one thing, any contractor that's listening to this, and I've got businesses of all sizes in Australia, none as big as what's in the US. So what would be the main area of focus if someone really, they've listened to this podcast, they've heard what we've talked about, and if they really wanted to get their business to a better place, what would you recommend?
Well, it's a different answer. So I would say this: the more that I've learned, the more I learn that I don't know. And I'll share it to you this way. I had to go through some experiences with private equity to kind of like figure it out myself. But now, like, if you want to build the most valuable business in the history of it, it doesn't matter if it's drains, HVAC, pizza, anything, whatever widget. If you want to build the most valuable and sell it, you got that will tell you what a valuable asset is. Like, you got to find the people that will pay $5 billion for a business, right? So I don't know who that might be: Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, Morgan Stanley. Like, go to their websites, go to their funds, and they will tell you a description of what that they will do in their funds. Okay, this fund is designed to look at these sectors over here, businesses that meet these requirements from a scalability. Here's how much revenue, etc. Here's the technology requirements that we have. Here's the compliance requirements that we have. Here's the audit requirement. They will give you all of the information on what you could sell to Goldman Sachs for $5 billion. But we've never taken that. We've just all kind of like, oh, we got best practice. This guy does this. It's the best practice. Write it in a book. This guy does this. It's the best practice. Write it in a book. Like, this last endeavor, I thought, okay, what's the infrastructure and requirements to sell a $5 billion business? Then I took that information, reverse engineered, applied it to home services, and said, this is what they want to buy. So we can bypass the first 3 levels of private equity groups that are going to just come in and stack you up with different level of infrastructure. Like, this is what they want to buy. So I would learn what makes a business valuable. What makes a business valuable to them is something that's scalable, repeatable, has independent management, and has consistently growing cash flow. And it's just like any investment. If you were going to put your money into whatever you're going to put your money into, like in a bond, you want to know it's going to have a certain yield. It's going to mature at a certain date. Like, it has to be predictable, right? And so you have to have the tools and technologies and systems that make it predictable. So I would say that, but I would say just learn more about what makes businesses valuable and just start applying it, an outsider's perspective into your business is probably the best thing that you can do.
It's a fact that most plumbers, electricians, air conditioning, heating, cooling technicians don't think that way. They think about fixing the air conditioning system or clearing the drain. And I think it requires a level of thinking that's well above the average contractor. And even I, as a plumber myself, I've never had that level of thinking. But the more I hang around you and Lewis and some of your team, I'm learning more about it. But I tell everyone that I work with that they need help from, whether it's a best practice group, which is great, but it's only going to take you so far. But the new level of best practice that I'm seeing and what you guys are doing is more of a, correct me if I'm wrong, it's instead of a here's the information, go do it. You're providing a done with you, and in some cases a done for you model. I'd love to explore that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, so this goes back to what I would experience 20 years ago, the best practice groups. There would be people that would just go to every meeting, that would pay all their dues, that would pay $25,000 to sign up and $300 a week, and just never do, at least on the surface, it appeared they would never do anything with it. They would never improve their business. They would never you'd be on a call with them. Oh, did you get this pricing thing implemented? Nope, not done that. I didn't. This guy didn't want to do that. It's like, okay, why are you? I don't understand why you're even in it, other than just you like to feel good, I guess. But I know that there are people that are super operators that just need to be provided with the right data, tools, support, etc., that have to, have some level maybe of additional accountability that can get this stuff done and drastically improve these businesses. I was just on a call with one right before this, and it's a mutual friend of ours is part of other best practice groups with us together. And now it's like, okay, he's got a GM that works with our team every day, has a daily huddle. It's like we're identifying the areas that need improvement in the business. We have a 12-week integration schedule of all the things that need to do and checking off the boxes. And he's building a systematic business. But it's so hard to even figure out where to get started. So we are working with everybody to do that. And in some cases, if they don't have the resources to do it, we will just kind of plug in, because a lot of our stuff is automated. And it's, again, I think it's like, you might say a best practices group on steroids, because we have real operators that have operated very large, profitable businesses working with you every day to build this yourself.
It's very impressive watching what you guys are doing, Landon. I'm proud to I recommend you and try to help any of your plumbers that want to really blow up their drains, which I feel is a highly untapped potential in any plumbing business. There's some serious revenue if a contractor is to engage with technology and no dig trenchless solutions. There's a ton of money to be made in that area. So, okay, well, I really do appreciate you joining me, and I think we've got between us, a lot of people that we know that we can maybe get the word out about what you guys are doing. So I'd like, besides, I was going to ask you what is your book recommendation, but you've already shared that. Is that E-Myth? Is that a new book from Michael, or is that
No, that's just the one he did with Ken. I just was going through all of my stuff. I got, Joe sent me a copy of his book. I'm just organizing all my stuff. I have some of the I think I'm gonna create a collection, because I got one from I don't know, it was before I was ever involved in it. Back in the 80s, I have some manuals from some of the old original gurus back then.
Maurice Mayer.
Doc Russ.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, this has been fantastic, and I want to thank you again, Landon. So anyone that wants to explore what you guys are doing, what's the best way to get a hold of either you or your team?
Myself, shoot me an email, landonbrewer@gmail.com. You can always find me on Facebook, I guess. We have a lot of the groups on Facebook, with the Service Einstein group. Yeah, that's probably the best ways to find me.
On that, and I'm going to put a few links into the show notes for this podcast. But of all the groups that are, and look, I hate Facebook. It's such a distraction.
I know,
but
it is. It's like
groups, business groups are just amazing, and your group is my absolute favorite. That's
appreciate that.
Yeah, Service Einsteins.
Service Einsteins.
I will give everyone a link to that group, and but Yeah, so that's one of my favorites, and I'll get some contact details to share with everyone. So thanks again for this very informative podcast, Landon, and thanks everyone that's joined us again with Pipeline to Profitability. I sincerely hope you got massive value from this podcast with our expert guests. If you're a home service plumbing or drain business, owner or manager, and you want to learn how to generate more revenue from your existing plumbing and drain calls without the complicated or pushy sales tactics, head to swipemydrainbusiness.com to learn more. Look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.